All right, well, welcome everyone. Why don't we get started with this evening's Marin Energy Authority Board of Directors meeting, Thursday, December 5th. Jumping right in, and by the way, we do have kind of a long agenda tonight. Does everyone have coffee? You got food? I'm just warning you at this point.
Well, this is Marin Energy Authority, for the time being.
Yeah, that's right.
You can have it.
Notice I use that name right for
Damon,
now.
you can go as long as you want, as long as you end at 9 o'clock. I'm fine with it.
That's going to be tough, but I do know we have a couple folks who need to leave by 9. So thank you for letting us know.
You got a date?
Okay, item 1, board announcements. Yeah, we're over this corner. We know what's coming. Item 1, board announcements. It doesn't look like we have any this evening. Item 2, public open time on matters not on the agenda. Doesn't look like any this evening. Item 3, report from executive officer. Dawn.
Great. I have quite a few items this evening, but I'll try to move through them very quickly. First, I wanted to report that there was a CCA conference held in Chicago just a few weeks ago, put together by Greene Energy USA. It was very well attended. It was a big success, I would say, with representatives from all over the country joining together to talk about CCA in many different states. So we got a lot out of it, and I think we were able to help inform folks from other parts of the country on how our program operates and how we've been able to procure a lot more green energy and clean energy than is the case with some other CCA. So it was a great learning experience and a lot of good cross-pollination there. Next, I wanted to announce that we just issued a press release on our solar rebate program, which is launching. And as per your board's direction from our last board meeting, the new solar rebate program is targeting low-income customers. And we're really excited about the opportunity to stimulate new solar installations that might not have otherwise happened by targeting the low-income sector. So SASH and MASH customers will be eligible for the program. We've already received at least one interested call from a nonprofit that is working with a customer that might be doing the installation. So we're really excited about that. Feel free to spread the word if you know folks that might be interested and that might fit into the criteria. The next thing I wanted to announce is we just issued a press release for a request for information that we are issuing for our energy efficiency program. We're looking for vendors who might be able to provide energy efficiency services and support, particularly around the use of smart meter data, home area networks, and some of the web-based interfacing that we've been experimenting with already this year. So we're interested in kind of casting a broad net, seeing what's out there, and some of the information that comes back to us could be used in the future for vendor selection, for filling out components of our energy efficiency program, and also will be used for the development of our future EE program cycle, which we'll be applying for to the CPUC sometime later this year, most likely. So we're really excited about the RFI going out. Again, spread the word if you know any entities that offer energy efficiency services and are interested in working with our agency. We have extra copies on the back table there, and we're also happy to email you a copy if you'd like one. It's just a 2-page RFI, so it's not too overwhelming. The next item I wanted to report on is really exciting. We've been working with an organization called Bidgely that does some really innovative work with home area networks to help customers monitor their energy usage, understand what different appliances are creating the most use at what times, and ultimately help folks reduce their energy use. Bidgely offered to us through our discussions a pilot program where they would give away 50 HON devices free to any of our residential customers. And so we put an ad up on our through our email list and up on our website, and within 2 hours, 50 devices had already been taken. And I personally, I was really surprised at how quickly they went.
We haven't had
So we're just really excited about the level of interest with this type of program, and I think it suggests that we may want to offer something on a bigger scale in the future. I also heard from one person that got their device the day before Thanksgiving, they plugged it in, got it working, and they actually got an alert on Thanksgiving Day letting them know that their energy usage was double the normal usage, which is common on Thanksgiving. We do see a big spike on our load. So it was neat to see that that worked already. And these devices can really disaggregate the appliances in your home. They can tell by the signature of the device, whether it's a refrigerator or a vacuum or whatever. So they can send you specific messages tailored to your usage. And we're really excited to learn from this pilot and expand it most likely in the near future.
I got rejected.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Well, we'll include you in the next round for sure. The next thing I wanted to update on is home utility reports have now been mailed to approximately 5,000 MCE customers. These are the flyers that are letting folks know what their usage is. They're personalized, so they're really tied to actual usage in the home, and they give individual messages about the customer's use. And these will be going out to the same customers on a periodic basis, and we'll be tracking to see if we're able to reduce energy use in those particular customers' homes. Next item I wanted to report on is there's been some correspondence with a member of the public who's been very interested in our agency recently, Mr. Phelps. Actually, he's been very interested in our agency for many years. And we have copies of a response that went out to some of his recent correspondence today. I think anyone who received the back and forth from Mr. Phelps received the response as well, but if you didn't, let me know, I can forward it. I also have some extra copies here. In many cases, the correspondence with Mr. Phelps goes out with blind copies to many other individuals, so we're not always aware of who needs to get the response. Many times the correspondence with Mr. Phelps contains a lot of misinformation, and it's important for us to be able to clear that up when possible. So if you know folks that need accurate information in response, let me know, or grab a copy of the letter here. The next thing I wanted to report on is that the town of San Anselmo is going to be unveiling and having a ribbon cutting of their EV charging station, which MCE helped to fund. And this will be occurring on Friday, December 13th, a week from tomorrow, at 10:30 a.m. I believe Director Greene will be there, and I think I'll be there, maybe a couple of other folks, but we're really excited that this has been a long process. We've been working on it for a couple of years, and we're really excited that it came together, and that should be of use, because I certainly see a lot of EVs going around in that area. Next, as far as upcoming dates and events, there will be a memorial service for Barbara George, who we remembered and talked about in our last meeting. The memorial for Barbara will be coming up in February. We don't yet have details, but when we do, we'll be sending them out to the full board and interested members of the public to make sure that folks can participate if they are interested and available. And then next, as far as dates, just a reminder that our holiday party is set up for December 20th at the same location as last year, the Falkirk. And I believe it starts at 6 or 6:30. It's an evening event at 6:30. Thank you, darling. And due to the schedule, the holiday schedule, we will not be holding our board meeting in January. It falls on January 2nd, and we would likely run into farm issues. So that meeting will not be held. That's one reason why the meeting tonight is so long, so we apologize for that, but just think about how much fun you're going to have on January 2nd, not having to come to a board meeting. In light of that, we're also going to continue the TechCom and XCOM meetings for December to January, so that those can happen in advance of our February meeting, which should be a full agenda as well by the time we get to February. And that is it for my report. Any questions?
Questions for Don? Okay,
Can
well,
I-
thank you.
thank you.
Yes, Ken.
The response you gave to Mr. Phelps was rather aggressive. Have other responses been of equal aggressiveness?
No, and I think that's a good point. It's great. It's nice that you raised that question. There has been a lot of correspondence with Mr. Phelps over the last 3-4 years. We receive very frequent inquiries from Mr. Phelps, several a week, many public information requests, many questions of a random nature, many accusations. They are frequently, the questions and correspondence is often sent to us with a copy to many of the local press and stakeholders in the community and in other communities around Marin. And in the past, our responses have been a lot more tempered, and in some cases, we haven't responded because often the responses tend to encourage more aggressive interactions. This really is the first time that we've had more a direct approach. This is something that I talked over with a couple of our directors, our chair and vice chair, in determining what the right tone would be. And this certainly is a much more direct tone than we've taken in the past. I think that the primary reason for that is that the accusations being leveled at the agency were very serious in nature. And we wanted to make sure that it was clear that that was just not acceptable.
You've seen his response to that, right?
Yeah.
It was to you. It was to Catherine.
Mm-hmm. He was directed to me, but copied to other people.
Okay.
Can I
just
Director O'Donnell.
Yeah, I don't think there's a need for this agency to continue to respond to Mr. Phelps time after time after time after time. I've received so many correspondences from him, and you know, if you're in an election and it's an 80-20 election, and everyone would consider that a landslide, yet the 20 seems to have a big voice to some degree, and this is a little bit of an example of that. And so I would caution you about wasting a lot of agency time chasing after sort of a gadfly type person.
No, we hear that, and I think Don accurately summarized kind of how in this case, we made it pointed given the accusations, which were over the top. But point well taken. Anything else? Okay, thanks again, Don. Item 4 is a consent calendar. We're going to pull item C9 due to a slight change, minor change that Don will go over in that proposed agreement. But in the interim, unless there's any comment or questions, I would entertain a motion.
I do ask to C4,
Okay.
which is the records retention policy.
Okay, we'll pull a C4.
I just had a question for Jamie on C, which is the one with the videos. C.
You can't figure it
Hold on.
C6?
C. Oh, thank you. Micro documentaries. Yeah, I just wanted to ask her a question. C6.
Okay, well, why don't we pull those 3 items, 4, 6, and 9? And unless there are questions or discussion on the remainder of the items, I will entertain a motion.
And I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? That matter carries. So why don't we take up item C4?
So I have just a few questions. My primary one is, when you're talking about retention, Dawn, are you the person to talk to? Does that mean that what's not retained is destroyed?
Yeah, and so we do our best to go through a process of deleting or recycling documents that are, according to our policy, that are ready to be deleted or destroyed.
Okay, so then what I don't really understand is that since everything is pretty much electronic, and I'm assuming that the scope of this is primarily electronic, what's the need for destroying stuff when you can store it with a minimum of space required? And the practical reason behind that is we're a young agency. We haven't been sued yet, but we will be. It's just a matter of time. And we don't know what the context will be. We don't know what the issues will be. But what I do know is that if you have a historic record of everything that's transpired with respect to a particular issue, your posture in terms of being able to have a successful position in the litigation is enhanced a lot. And when it doesn't really seem like it would take a lot of expense or a lot of space to store documents electronically, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me to be getting rid of it. So what's your response to that?
Yeah, that's a great point, and it's certainly something we can revisit. When we put this policy in place, we were really following the protocol in place by some of our member agencies, and we really looked to the County of Marin as the best example, or the primary example of how to deal with records, and we just wanted to have something on our books to make sure, most importantly was to make sure that we were retaining stuff long enough and keeping track of the right things. And so in doing that, we looked at, well, what is the best protocol for when you don't need to keep stuff? So that was one piece that goes into it. The other piece that goes into it that's a little different for us and doesn't come into play with the county is that we do, one part of our business with the agency is to enter into correspondence with counterparties to draft PPAs, for example. In the process of doing that, there's a lot of drafts, a lot of redrafts and new drafts, and there's also a lot of email correspondence, like, well, do you think we should, would you be okay with this change? And
sure.
No, well, let's do this. And so if we retain any of that information past a 30-day period, it automatically becomes a public record. There are some cases where it is prudent to keep that type of communication for at least a 30-day period after the contract has been executed. But then after a year or two, I think our policy says a year, I think our policy says 2 years for email correspondence, we then want to go through and delete that because it could create some liability for our counterparties.
Well, so for example, in using that, your example there, if email's retained for 2 years, it doesn't make a lot of sense to me that board and committee meeting materials are retained for the same period of time. When you're talking about agendas, staff reports, and all the other decision-making material that we've relied on. It would seem to me that that stuff ought to be retained for a really long time, if not in perpetuity. I understand your example about email and all that, and that makes sense to me, but it just, when I go through the list here and look at the times that are tagged to particular categories, for example, the ones having to do with the board, really don't make any sense to me.
I like that idea, actually, and I think the time might be right to revisit this. When we were pulling this together, a lot of our board XCOM materials we actually do keep in hard copy. And at the time we put this together, we were still a young agency and we also had limited space. And we were thinking about, well, where are we going to put all of these materials? But you're right, that keeping things electronically isn't a burden in any way, isn't a space issue. And we also have more space now to physically retain some of the documents that relate to our committee meetings. So it might be a good idea now that we've evolved a bit to kind of revisit this and see if we want to fine tune it a bit more.
If I could say something, the fact that a lot of our stuff is maintained digitally is not unusual in today's world. I think you'll find most businesses and also keep most of the things electronically, but it's normally considered to be a good policy to have a retention period, ergo a destruct period. It may be useful in some circumstances to be able to go back to the birth of the company in order to find some documents, but I'll tell you there's also some circumstances where it may not be useful to have certain documents that have either been have been transcended beyond. So I think you'll find the general accepted practice in record retention is in fact to have a limited time on many records. Whether or not the times you have in here with the board members, I think I agree with the board stuff. But with regard to emails, I have clients who, if they don't do something with an email within, I think, 10 days, just go away. And that's their policy, that they would just assume not keep everything. And so it may be a time to re-look at this, but I think there's some considerations going both ways. Maybe you want to change the dates, but there is a reason not to keep everything.
Yeah, and if I can just make a quick note is, when we had developed this policy, we worked very closely with Greg Stepanovich at Richards, Boston & Gershon, and some of his experts on records retention. And so it was actually a pretty lengthy process that we did go through, but I think that, you know, I'm perfectly amenable to going through that again and refining.
Len?
I just wanted to add on Dawn's example that she gave about like PPAs, power contracts, that sort of thing. Recent case law has shown that actually the parole evidence rule is alive and well, meaning that some the courts are more likely than not looking beyond the four corners of the document, and so, you know, sometimes a whole series of drafts and what people were saying that went into a contract actually could be helpful. And
Or hurtful.
Or hurtful, depends, but you know, and so that's just something to think about, that at least regarding important contracts, saving drafts until the life of the contract is over and people have performed might be helpful, because if there was a challenge on it. So all that draft information may actually be helpful in today's business litigation world.
So it sounds like we can put some more thought into this. I think there's general consensus that we should have some sort of records retention policy, but perhaps revisit some of the dates on certain categories. So why don't we kick this over to the executive committee? Okay, great. Okay, the next one,
The C6.
is C6.
So that was me. So Jamie, my question just briefly was, it looks like it's about $9,000 a video or something like that. For deliverables, $35,000 or $36,000. It just seemed like, you know, so maybe they're screaming great videos, and you know, and they should be $1 million a video. I don't know, but I just wanted to hear your thoughts about that.
So they're actually $6,000 per video. So for the 4 videos that we're planning on doing, it would be $24,000 each, and that includes a discount that they're offering to us as a first-time service with us. I believe it's a $1,000 discount per video that they're offering. The prices that they're offering are actually, it's $1,000 discount per video, so a $4,000 discount overall. And the prices that they offered us are actually quite good when compared to other companies that I've spoken to about the video production. They have a streamlined process. You may have noticed in the scope of work that there's a pretty tight schedule that they adhere to. And they do things like using, you know, natural lighting instead of bringing equipment and things like that to keep the costs a little bit lower. The reason the contract is higher than $24,000 is because each of the videos that we're going to have produced are 2 minutes each. We added in the contract as an option to reduce each of those videos to 30 seconds, allowing us, that would allow us to use them in any kind of broadcast advertising. So if we wanted to do commercials on our, you know, local TV stations or online commercials, they have to be reduced down to 30 seconds. So that's an additional $2,500 each per video if we want to do that.
And you've seen their products and materials, and you think they're really going to go in.
They're really, I'm very impressed with the organization. We actually started having conversations with them about 2 years ago. I had conversations with at least 2 other video companies recently and others throughout the last year, and I was most impressed with their work. The videos that they've produced are really in line with sort of our branding and our look and feel anyway, and our messaging. They're very professional, they look very clean, and I think we'll be really pleased with their work.
Thank you.
Director Brian.
No, I don't know anything about the company, the production company, but I know the Community Media Center is available and may be willing to provide services as a sister agency. So it's just something to keep in mind as we go forward, because I think there's going to be more and more video presentation on the website. So it's there and very capable. So just something to keep in mind as you go forward.
Great, absolutely.
Good idea. Okay, any further discussion on item C6? Members of the public? Okay, I'll call for a vote.
I move that we.
Yeah. Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Item C9.
Great. So I just have there's one minor change that I wanted to make folks aware of before we call for approval on this item, and that is that in the proposed amendment that you have, there is a very minor date change, and this is in section C1 and C2. We're giving EDF a 60-day extension rather than a 30-day extension. So the change that would be reflected in the final version is in 6.1 we would change September to August, and in 6.2 we would change March to February. I'm sorry, we would change February to March. I'm saying it backwards on you. So in 6.1 we're changing August to September, and in 6.2 we're changing February to March, and it's actually going to be March 29th, the same years that are shown there. The reason for that is that there was, because we were negotiating this addendum, there was a delay in their procurement process, and so they needed an extra 30 days to resolve that issue. So that's the only change. Everything else is as presented in your board packet from last week. Are there any questions?
Have a motion?
I'll move.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. That matter carries. Okay, great. That covers consent calendar. We now move to item 5, resolution 2013-10, honoring board member Len Rifkind. All right, so what I'm going to do, Len, we have, in addition to our undying gratitude for your service, we have a resolution for you.
Do we get to vote?
Actually, believe it or not, we do. It's an action item at the end.
I think Director Wachtel has a bias, so I want him recused.
Well, I think if you have conflict of interest, you have to be recused. You shouldn't say that.
It's only appropriate that you're sitting next to Ken on your last meeting. So. That was by your choice. So I'm going to read from the resolution and then editorialize a little bit myself and invite our colleagues to chime in as well. But in pertinent part, the resolution says that whereas Len was elected to the Larkspur City Council in January 2009 and served enthusiastically until December 2013, he has been a dedicated public servant, a strong environmental leader with a focused business sense, an advocate for the betterment of the city of Larkspur. Whereas Len was elected mayor of the city of Larkspur and served from 2011 to 2012. Whereas on January 5th, 2012, Len was appointed to represent Larkspur on the Marin Energy Authority board. And whereas Director Rifkind has shown his dedication and commitment to the Marin Energy Authority through his conscientious and thoughtful service on the board of directors, its executive committee, and whereas Director Rifkind has always been a reliable team member, offering a steady presence on the board with his objective analysis of issues and thought-provoking questions, which will be missed by his board colleagues. And whereas the Marin Energy Authority board and staff thank Director Rifkind for his passion and commitment to the agency, its goals, and purpose. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the board that the Marin Energy Authority board and staff do hereby extend to Len our appreciation for his dedicated service, our congratulations on his future endeavors, and our best wishes for his continued success, happiness, and good health in the years to come.
I like the good health part.
Yes.
You like the health. Without the health, you got nothing.
So Len, I just wanted to put it simply, I mean, you made an impact on this organization. I think you kind of came in a unique situation in that Larkspur was not an immediate participant, as we know. There was some thinking over time, and finally Larkspur did join. And I think you came in as a perfect representative to reflect that, in the sense that you were asking the tough questions, you were keeping an open mind, you know, being a lawyer, being analytical, you really got in. And what impressed me is the energy you brought to it. I mean, you literally volunteered for every significant assignment. You bent over backwards to really try to make the agency succeed during a key time period of some uncertainty, and ultimately, I think, some success due in large part to you. So I thank you personally, and we're going to miss you for sure, but we know where to find you too. So with that, I don't know if any other colleagues have any comments.
Let me.
Yes.
No, I just want to say, Lynn, Damon's right. You made an excellent board member here. You saw through a lot of the wording to figure out what was going on. You asked important questions. You got good answers. I think you were an asset both to MEA and to your position as a council member in Larkspur.
Okay, so let me give you the resume.
Oh, you gotta memorialize this.
Photo op. Don, get over here. All right.
Ready? 1, 2, 3. Let me do one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay.
All right. Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Thank you.
I don't know where
You can't come back after you got that.
I know. I still have the rest of the meeting to make you regretting that you gave me that resolution.
So actually, we do need action now. Approval of the resolution. Okay, we have a motion and second. All in favor? Aye.
Yes. Let me
Matter
think.
carried.
And what nobody did say, we'll miss you.
Thanks.
And if it's worth saying.
Well, and then I should have listened myself better.
I'm used to that part, so.
So am I, I'm sorry.
Okay, item 6, membership changes for TechCom and XCOM.
Great, so I can introduce this item. We have just a couple of adjustments to make, partly because of a change in our board members. And we've included a little information in your packet, a one-pager that just is a reminder of who is sitting on which committee. And currently, in our executive committee, we have Director Connolly serving as the chair of our XCOM. We have Director Apis, Director Butt, and Director Sears also on the executive committee. We will be losing Director Rifkind, unfortunately, and also Director Rafael is going to be rotating off because he has a lot of other commitments. And so we have 2 other directors that have expressed interest in being on the executive committee, and not only have they expressed a lot of interest, but they've actually shown up to the last 3, at least, I think, executive committee meetings, so they're really already kind of in the committee, and they're very up to speed. So I'm really grateful to have that interest. And those are Director McCatskill and Director Bailey. And so they've offered to be on the committee. So that is one thing that is being proposed tonight. And then we can talk about TechCom separately, or I can talk about that next. What's your preference?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, so on our technical committee, we have Director Sears, who is serving as the chair of that committee. We also have Director Greene, Director O'Donnell, Director Small, and Director Withy. And then Director Bragman has been on the committee, but due to time constraints, is going to be rotating off. We've had difficulty with quorum in this committee lately, and so the change there will allow for a little more flexibility with folks that might need to miss a meeting without delaying the quorum issue and delaying the meeting altogether. So that's what's being proposed with TechCom.
Great, and then ad hoc rates.
Yeah, and that's actually the next agenda item, so
okay.
maybe we can just take action on that separately, but I'm happy to introduce it now, just while we're thinking about committees. Would that be better?
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so Because we will be getting into rate setting in January, we need to formally put together an ad hoc rate setting committee for the purpose of talking about rates and our proposed rates that would ultimately be coming to the February board meeting to be introduced. And we then go through a 60-day public review process before the rates are formally adopted in April and then go into effect at the very beginning of our fiscal year. So the ad hoc rate setting committee would meet in January and then potentially meet another time either there may be 2 meetings in January, depending on the need and depending on what type of public feedback there is or other issues that may come up. There may be a meeting after the initial board presentation in February. So the ad hoc rate setting committee is a commitment that involves at least 1 meeting, possibly 2 or more, but hopefully not. And we have a couple of directors that have expressed a willingness and interest in being on this committee. Director Connolly, who's been on rate setting committees in the past, has stepped up and offered to chair the committee, which we're grateful for. Also, Director Athos, Director Bailey, Director O'Donnell, and Director McCaskill have offered to participate in this committee. I want to mention that we could fit another director into the committee without any Brown Act issues. So if you're interested, speak up now.
In
These are
the
folks that
executive
heard
committee?
so far.
No,
Rate
rate
setting.
setting.
Oh, rate setting.
Rate setting. Great.
He's not speaking up.
Yeah, and why don't, let's take item 6 before we get to 7 then. So item 6 is TechCom and XCOM. Any discussion? Okay, I need a motion on that.
I'll move to approve the proposed changes.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? That matter carries. So item 7 is the ad hoc rate setting committee, and it sounds like there would be the possibility of adding 1 other person to that if anyone's interested.
I am.
Okay. Great. So we'll add Director Greene and make a total of 6 on that. Any further discussion on item 7? How about a motion then?
I'll move.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? That matter carries.
I just want to verify that I just need to do a little bit of math for a second, because we need to make sure that there's no quorum of committee. That
Yeah.
is also, okay.
Yeah, it's 6
Right,
members and
because
our full board
that's
is 13.
6.
No, but even committees as well.
Ah, very good point. Okay, let's
So-
check here.
It seems like we might run into an issue with that.
Yeah.
So Beth, what's the issue?
What's the issue, Beth? Yeah.
And unfortunately, Greg Stepanisic isn't here tonight, but if you have a quorum of a committee, then that, so ad hoc committees are not sort of Brown Act committees. But, for example, XCOM and TechCom are, so if you have a quorum of a committee on your ad hoc committee, then it ends up being a public meeting.
There's
instead.
12, so 7's a quorum, so what's the deal?
Yeah, so we may need 1 person who is on XCOM to not participate in the rate setting committee in order to avoid violating that. I think basically the problem is that you can't have a quorum of your XCOM meeting in some other venue.
Let me just,
Oh, I
just
see.
want to
It's
make
not
sure.
the
But they're talking
numbers,
about something
it's
else,
the
though.
individuals.
But it's different subject.
It's interlocking.
No, and the ad hoc committees are not public committees.
Yeah,
So I think Beth's concern is definitely an issue.
Yeah, so we have on the proposed ad hoc
And
committee, you have
so
on the
that's-
executive committee, if you have
So they should want to get rid of 1,
Damon,
but then it's not.
Denise,
It's not a public committee anyway.
But they
and
just need to get 4 people
Bob,
together.
Yeah.
It's all-
and
Yeah.
Sloan, then you
I see.
end up with
Quorum, I see.
a quorum of the executive committee, which we can't have.
Yeah.
And so-
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
sorry to.
Yeah, that's good.
No,
That's
good
great.
catch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it seems that with the, so with Director Greene, I think that works. I think the issue that we run into is with the proposed committee, if you have Director Athens, Director Bailey, and
McCaskill
Director
and
McCaskill.
Connolly.
And by the way, I would be happy not to be on that,
Maybe that's
to
what
let
this is.
others,
Yeah.
if they want to do that.
And I'm also happy to go on.
No, I think you'd be great on it, Sloan. So let me not be on that.
Okay, so
I'm
let me
going to
just,
Green exit.
so there's going to be,
So basically replace me with Ford.
okay, and then that leaves us down to Director Athos, Director McCaskill, and Director Bailey, which is not a quorum of the executive committee. And then separately, Director Greene, Director O'Donnell are from the technical committee, so that approach works. So that would be number.
That works.
Okay, so the motion on item 7 would be the proposed ad hoc rate setting committee with Director Greene replacing
I
me.
think you just got to be the chair.
I think I will.
It seems to suit you just fine.
You know, step right up, step right in.
Very good.
That was a real good power.
Any further discussion? Okay, can I have a motion
I'll
on it?
move.
I'll second.
Yeah, you would.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Okay, item 8, resolution adopting amendment number 7 to the JPA, changing the name, Marin Energy Authority to Marin Clean Energy.
All right, so this is kind of a big deal. I want to provide a little bit of backdrop to how this came up and why we're talking about this evening. Jamie's going to talk a little bit about this as well from the marketing and communications perspective. Over the last few years, we have frequently gotten the question, so what's the difference between MEA and MCE? What's the difference between Marin Energy Authority and Marin Clean Energy? I get that question when I'm at the CPUC, I get it when I'm in Sacramento, I get it when I'm talking to my neighbor or a customer. It adds to a bit of the confusion about our agency that may or may not already exist for folks, and it also cuts into the time we can spend talking about the things that our agency is doing, rather than explaining the difference in the names. The response that we always give is, well, Marin Energy Authority is the name of our governing body, Marin Clean Energy is the name of our program. So because this has continued to come up, we spent some time for the last few months thinking about how we could simplify. We also spent some time talking to Greg Stepanovich, our municipal counsel from Richard Schwartz-Gershon, to just talk about procedurally what would need to happen if we were to shift the name of the agency. We have been using Marin Clean Energy in most cases anyway, but our formal name, as filed with the state, is Marin Energy Authority, and as a result, that's how we need to file our comments with the CPUC, that's how we need to sign our contracts and that sort of thing. So a formal name, if we wanted to eliminate confusion, a formal name change does seem to make the most sense as an approach. The last thing I want to point out kind of from the historical perspective, the name Marin Clean Energy, actually I have a sticker here from before the Marin Energy Authority was even formed. Marin Clean Energy has been the name of our program even before our governing body was in place. So it's been around for a long time. It's continued to hold true as a good brand. It resonates well in the community, certainly better than the word authority with customers. We've been told that by all of our marketing consultants to avoid the use of that word. So those are some of the reasons behind this coming before you this evening. We also felt like the timing might be nice because we're at the end of a year. This might be a nice thing to kind of institute on January 1, where we have a fresh start and we can start to roll over to just using that new name going forward. So that's some of the background on it, and I'd like to turn it over to Jamie to talk about some of the specific communication issues that come into play here.
Yeah, Donnie did a good job covering the reasons and sort of explaining why we think this is a good move, but I would just resonate what Dawn said about customer communications and sort of, reducing the two names and bringing it to one will help in all kinds of communications. You'll notice when you read articles about our program in the press, sometimes they refer to it as Marin Energy Authority, or sometimes Marine Clean Energy, or sometimes the Authority, or MCE, and we do get that question all the time, so I think it'll help strengthen our brand to bring it down to one name, and it'll add consistency. As you all know, we started rebranding at the beginning of 2013 in January to MCE as part of our outreach to Richmond, so that we weren't being exclusive with the word Marin, and changing the business name to Marine Clean Energy officially allows us to continue to do that. So it's really, it'll be a simple and easy transition for the communications team in our outreach with customers and everything from our website URLs, our email addresses. And like Don said, because we've been using it for so long, there's a lot of brand equity that we've developed with the Marine Clean Energy name. I think people associate with that name a lot more than Marin Energy Authority, because even before we were saying MCE, because of Richmond, we always branded the program as Marin Clean Energy to the customer, to customer-facing issues. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about marketing or branding and communications pieces of it.
And I think this is something we've been talking about for a while, so Ken.
I just have one question. Has there been any consideration just to rename the company MCE?
Yeah, so there, I can say a few things about it, and then anyone else who wants to weigh in, but well, for one, when you're thinking about changing a name, the very first thing you have to consider is whether other organizations are using that name, and if it's even available. If it's copyright protected or it's trademarked, and MCE is used by other organizations, you just have to think about the URL. And MCE on its own I don't think it's as strong and as memorable for branding for customers as Marin Clean Energy, or in Richmond we were using MCE Clean Energy. So I think that sort of shifted us to stick with Marin Clean Energy. I think if we changed it to MCE, we'd still get the question from people and regulatory and also from customers as to what MCE stands for. Changing it to Marin Clean Energy allows us to continue, to use MCE as the acronym, but it gives us a little bit more flexibility.
This may be a little different, but I remember we talked about the executive committee, but there were also comments that maybe you might want to consider renaming it something like, there were a whole bunch of suggestions, North Bay Clean Energy or Northern, since we apparently are going to be dealing with communities outside Marin, to take the word Marin out of it completely so there wouldn't be any value added or subtracted because the word Marin was in it. Was that considered? Because I know we talked about names.
Yeah, it was definitely something that we thought about. This was, a lengthy process internally, something that we discussed obviously with the executive committee and with staff and our consultants and the like. And changing our name completely is a much larger endeavor. It's much more expensive. It gets really expensive if you think about all the collateral that we have. We would have to redo everything, all of our brochures, our website altogether, all of the stickers and pens and pencils, and we would have to start over with getting our new name into the top of people's minds and something that they associate with this program. And the fact that we've already got 125,000 customers right now, that's asking a lot of our customers to do. And I think the reason that we wanted to do this was to sort of make it easier for our customers and for anyone who's learning about the program, and asking them to remember us right now by a new name is kind of the opposite of that.
Can I add a comment to that? Ken, I think the way we get away from just the Marin name is like how we marketed in Richmond, where we called ourselves MCE Clean Energy. And so that can be used for the marketing purposes in other non-Marin jurisdictions, and so that's how that gets covered.
I think Marin can also be used not just for geographic location, but can convey origination. And I think most people would agree that Marin does deserve some recognition for starting this program and being the first in California. And like Len said, we can message and rebrand to avoid the issue with having it seem geographically limited for our new customer base.
Any other questions or discussion on this item?
I'm glad that you're doing it. It took me forever to be able to wire the difference between MEA and MCE, and now that I finally have, you're gonna change it back. I think consistency's good.
Very true. Members of the public? Silence,
Good
I'll
job.
take as, yeah. All right. Thank you.
Public is unanimous.
Yes. Okay, so motion?
I move the resolution.
I second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Opposed? That matter carries. Great. That's a big deal.
That's a big deal, yeah.
Okay, item 9, resolution approving revisions to net energy metering tariff. Justin?
Thank you. So today what we're going to go over is what some of these proposed revisions are for the net metering tariff. It was also asked that we do a bit of an overview of what exactly NEM is, what net metering is. And a very simple explanation of it is it's the billing mechanism that's used by solar customers or other people who generate renewable energy on site at their home or business. And it's the billing mechanism they use to get their credit for that generation. So one of the analogies I hear used for net energy metering is spinning the meter backwards. It's kind of a simple analogy. It's usually used by solar companies with some great graphic of the meter turning and money coming out of it and how solar is going to save you money. But to be a little bit more precise about it, what net metering is it's the netting out via your electric meter of the customer's usage as well as the customer's on-site self-generation of renewable energy. And it's important to keep in mind that the credits that come out of that self-generation are provided in dollars, not in units of electricity. Every time you do generate power, you get compensated based on the rates for generation, the rates for delivery of electricity, and the rates for other fees associated with electricity usage. So, as a attempt to walk through the billing aspect of how net metering works, and I apologize here, the font I use is a little too small, so I tried to blow it up, and it's still a bit small. PG&E still assesses net metering customers a monthly bill, but it's not going to have any charges for actual electric usage. What's going to be on that monthly bill is the charges for gas, and also something called a minimum bill charge. And the minimum bill charge is PG&E saying, we're not charging you for electricity, but we have to charge you something for servicing your account. It's usually about a $5 fee for residential customers, more for commercial customers. You're also going to have in that bill something called a net metering statement. And what a net metering statement is it's a year-to-date tally of the customer's usage as well as their own self-generation. And it's going to give an idea based on that year-to-date tally how much credit is available or how much is going to be due at the end of the annual billing cycle. At the end of that annual billing cycle, PG&E is going to issue something that's called a true-up statement. And what the true-up is it says that the balance of the net metering statement is due. This settles out your electric charges for the year once you pay us for that balance. In some cases, customers will generate more electricity or more credits for electricity than they actually use. And so they'll have excess credits on their account. Those credits are always forfeited during a true-up process. They're wiped off the account and the account starts at 0 in the next year. Now with MCE customers, they're billed this way too, but there's a couple differences. One is that MCE issues charges and credits on the customer's monthly bill rather than in that annual net metering statement. We also provide certain bonus credits and incentives for net metering that PG&E does not provide. So to try to visualize what this looks like a little bit, have a graphical representation here. You have the customer with some monthly electric usage and a larger monthly electric production, and from those two, you determine what the customer's net electricity production is. Now, from that net electricity production, you get amounts that are going to be on the customer's monthly bill as well as on their net metering statement. On the left side here, we have minimum bill charges and PG&E gas charges. These are not connected and do not have anything to do with the customer's monthly net electricity production, but they are billed on a monthly basis. The other three bubbles here are generation credits, credits for the actual electricity, distribution and transmission credits, credits towards future delivery of electricity, and credits for other services. There's a lot of other little line item charges on there. Even the PCIA falls into there. And these are all going to be added to the annual net metering statement. For MCE customers, this is going to work just a little bit different. Everything starts out the same. One thing you'll notice moves here is the generation credits have been moved into the monthly billing. That's the only thing that really changes here. And then the other charges are still going to be issued through the net metering statement. PG&E is still going to issue a true-up for MCE's NEM customers, but it's only going to be for those delivery charges. So some of the incentives that MCE offers, these are a big deal. This is what makes our NEM program more cost-friendly for customers than what PG&E offers. One of the biggest ones is the Deep Greene surcharge. So normally we have a Deep Greene surcharge for customers that want to participate in Deep Greene. When customers generate electricity through net energy metering, we give them that same 1 penny per kilowatt hour. So if a customer's rate is 7 cents per kilowatt hour and they're using electricity, they're still going to pay 7 cents per kilowatt hour. But if over a month they generate electricity, they have a negative usage there, we're going to credit them at 8 cents per kilowatt hour. So they can get an enhanced rate for when they're making electricity, but still pay regular rates when they use it later.
And Justin, that benefits the agency, obviously, because they're overproducing and thus contributing generation.
Sure, they're generating electricity, and the extra rate that we're providing is a benefit to the customer in particular.
And then the benefit to us is the additional generation or what?
I would say it's more of a board policy to support local production than it is really an actual benefit to the agency.
Okay.
It's more of a loss to the agency, frankly, because we do not receive any any renewable energy credit for their production. RECs are not associated with what they produce. Therefore, it's simply a reduction in how much power we buy.
Right.
But we're buying power at a high price comparatively for our renewable power, so it's not really an economic benefit to us.
Is the reason with no RECs applied to local generation just because it's a homeowner and not a big cow pine or something like that that's producing?
Yeah, and this is a point that may change in the future at some point. I think PG&E has proposed, and some of the IOUs have been looking at the possibility of using their local NEMS customers to report and count as part of their renewable procurement. And this is controversial, obviously, because it hasn't been done before. And the question that comes up with this is if a homeowner is, it's kind of who's taking credit for the green power. And if the homeowner is installing this and choosing to do it because they want to say they have green power, then if they sell those green attributes to PG&E, then there's a question about who can claim the rights to those credits. There's also sort of a question of, could this be a sweeping change that customers don't get to weigh in on, and the RECs are just taken from them and given to the utility, or would there be a choice and then a compensation associated with that? It's something that will be discussed, I think, in coming years, and there are a lot of parties with strong opinions on both sides. It is possible for a residential customer to get an account with Regis and sell their RECs through Regis, but it would be it wouldn't be very cost effective to do that. It's cost effective for a large producer to do that, but not for a small residential.
So ultimately, those potential wrecks could be claimed by Marin Clean Energy and potentially, which would provide some value to the producing residential home for that claim.
Yeah, it's possible, and there are some solar developers, Solar City, for example, they aggregate some of the RECs that are associated with their leased solar systems that are on residential units, and when the customer signs up to be a leasing customer, they give away those RECs to Solar City. They give the REC to those RECs to Solar City or another developer. And then those RECs could be sold to another entity. In fact, we've had RECs from schools offered to us from one of these aggregators. And Greg is familiar with that. If you want to add anything, feel free if I've missed anything there.
2 points. We do get an indirect benefit from the solar projects. We avoid capacity charges.
Right.
So generally these systems are sized 3 or 4 times the capacity of the house. So we do get a very large capacity credit instead of just the 1 kilowatt system. You get a 5 kilowatt credit, say.
Is there a limit right now on how big they can go?
Typically, PG&E sort of limits the generation to 60%, I think, of their total annual demand.
Okay.
We'll go up to 100%, but we still want to. You don't want to generate much more than that. You'll have a substantial problem for us.
Here's a question. Theoretically, if the homeowner uses, let's just say, 10 kilowatts of energy and generates 10 kilowatts of energy through a solar panel or something, do they end up with 10 cents?
If their capacity in solar is exactly the same as their
Right.
peak demand, they would still have a bill. It takes about 4 times your peak demand to zero out your kilowatt hours per year.
Well, but see, I thought that Justin said that we buy them at 8 cents and sell it at 7 cents.
That's really kind of a simplified example.
Well, that's all I mean, okay.
There's quite a lot of variety in the electric rates that are used for solar customers. Most solar customers are in particular going to use something called time of use rates. And so they may generate electricity at a higher rate during peak hours during the day than they later.
Yeah, I know the concept of different rates being charged at different times of day on the basis of different levels of usage. But if we're just so I can understand simply, if they only turn on their clock for 10 minutes a month, and it uses 10 kilowatts, and their solar panels at the same time generate 10 kilowatts, do we pay them money?
We would give them a little bit of extra credit for the power they're generating at 1 cent per kilowatt hour. So understanding your example, they would be getting 10 cents more credit than.
So that's a credit on future use?
Towards future use, yes.
Can they ever cash out?
They can.
They can.
Mm-hmm.
And do they lose it at the end of the year?
No, they don't.
I thought it said the credit's not used at the end of the year.
That was
PG.
That
was PG.
Oh.
Bad boy,
Okay.
bad people do that.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I have a question to follow up with that. So, as a matter of public policy, we're encouraging folks to install solar systems, and they're given an incentive, as we're talking about the 1 cent per kilowatt hour credit. And Damon was asking, well, how was the agency benefiting? And so technically, we're not benefiting from a cash flow standpoint, but now we then focused on the REC argument. And so, is there a way this can be structured so MCE is entitled to the RECs and we can sell the RECs while we're still giving 1% credit? So we're enhancing policy, the homeowner's getting the rebate, and we still have something left. Is that, are we structuring it like that? Is that how this works?
We are exploring that,
Okay.
and hopefully we'll know more about how that could work in the near future.
Who's going to decide? Is that PUC going to decide whether MCE gets the RECs?
No. But we need to look at how the process unfolds over the next year. There's some new legislation that's going to be enacted through a proceeding at the CPUC that could have some bearing on how this is done with from IOUs, and it's likely that we would want to structure such a program based on what we see happening in the rest of the market, so that we're not structuring something that is too different or seems to not be following the protocol that others are following. So we're kind of in information gathering mode right now on that.
So continuing, one of the other big incentives that was just being discussed was about rollover of credits and about how PG&E handles it versus how MCE handles it. As indicated earlier, PG&E is going to enforce a forfeiture of any credits during that annual billing cycle. MCE is instead going to allow customers to keep any excess generation credits. They're going to roll over into the next year and continue in perpetuity. Another thing that we do offer is that customers that have over $100 in credit each April are allowed to cash out those credits. They can receive the full value of those credits in the form of a check. That's something that PG&E doesn't allow and is fairly unprecedented within the industry. So again, the bottom line really is that we're creating incentives that allow customers to get more for their self-generation of renewable energy than they would get through PG&E. Some of the board members during the executive committee meeting wanted to have kind of a billing example of what some of these charges would look like. This is a very simplified, very basic commercial customer here using 1,000 kilowatt hours. This is just a usage month. As you all are aware, our commercial rates are actually lower than PG&E's. And so you have an $89 generation charge versus PG&E's $101 generation charge. You add in a couple other charges. You also add in PG&E's PCIA and franchise fee, and bottom line is MCE ends up being cheaper than PG&E by about $6.50. Now, if this customer was generating 1,000 kilowatt hours of electricity instead, it would look something like this. And you'll notice that most of these numbers are the same numbers, they're just negative. Instead of $89 in charges, you have $89 in credit. One key difference, though, is that deep green bonus. They're getting an extra penny per kilowatt hour at 1,000 kilowatt hours, so that's $10 in bonus credit. When you add it all up together, the bottom line is going to be, once again, that the best deal is MCE. This customer is going to get more credit with MCE by a couple dollars. So both ways, the customer gets the best deal. So just some background on MCE's NEM tariff. The NEM tariff was first set up in June of 2010. Back then, we had less than 250 NEM customers. At this point, we have over 2,500 NEM customers, and we've already met the goals of our integrated resource plan for solar generation. NEM's changed quite a bit since then. What types of technologies are considered eligible to qualify for NEM have changed a little bit. There's been some new NEM programs, some variants, something called virtual net energy metering, as well as aggregated net energy metering, which are two types of programs that allow you to take multiple sites or multiple accounts and share NEM credits among them. We've learned a lot through our integration with PG&E. That includes some of the limitations of PG&E's billing system and how they process NEM accounts. And bills have changed as well. You're all getting new bills from PG&E starting in August of this year, and the NEM, the net metering statements are going to be changing beginning in 2014 as well. So the revisions that are being proposed here for the NEM tariff, these are revisions that will address some of these changes to net metering and will allow us to better serve our customers as well as better meet our organizational objectives. And I apologize, I got everything squished here. This was another font change to try to make it a little bit more readable. One of the big changes we're talking about here is how the application of NEM generation credits will be notated on customer bills. To date, we have been passing through credits that PG&E has placed on customer bills, and we intended those credits to offset future MCE generation charges. One of the problems with PG&E's billing system is they don't have an ability to isolate that from their charges for gas. And so when you add the generation credits to the bill, they end up offsetting PG&E gas charges. As a result of that, PG&E doesn't get compensated for the gas charges that they're assessing customers on a monthly basis. And this can also apply to other PG&E charges for delivery or any other services. So this has been a challenge for us, and it's something that we've talked to PG&E about for quite a while and asked if they can fix. And after considerable amount of discussion, the solution we came up with was for MCE to notate these credits and track them ourselves. So what the proposed revisions would do is MCE would, instead of passing these credits through into PG&E's bill, would keep track of these credits and apply them ourselves via Noble to future customer charges. Another one of the changes that's being proposed is a replacement of the net generator credit. One of the other incentives that we have been offering is a $4 net generator credit. If a customer generates more electricity in kilowatt hours than they use, we have been granting a $4 a month credit that was meant to go towards minimum bill charges from PG&E. Unfortunately, because some of those billing problems we mentioned with PG&E, it hasn't been able to do that. It's just been an extra generation credit that we've been providing. It's not something that's very well understood by customers or by the solar industry, in part because it works independent of time of use rates. It's simply operating, looking and saying, okay, well, you generated more electricity, so here's a $4 credit. What we've proposed doing instead of this credit is to remove it and replace it with reallocating the funding into the solar energy installation rebates for fiscal year 2015. The total funding that's going towards this right now is about $22,000 per year, and if we reallocated that towards the solar installation rebates, that would help to encourage new solar instead. One of the last item I have during this particular slide is expanded availability of cash out. One thing that PG&E does when customers switch service is they do a true-up of the account. They do that annual settlement, and that can cause customers to lose credits, and it can be frustrating for customers because they have to be careful with their timing to be sure that they don't have credits on their PG&E account when they switch back and forth with service. We thought that this is a place that MCE can do better than what's being offered by PG&E. So what we're proposing is to allow customers to keep credits and still be eligible for a cash out, even if they switch out of service, even if they opt out of service, provided they provide notification to us within 90 days. Some other smaller changes we have proposed here. One of them is regarding program eligibility requirements. The original requirements specifying eligible technologies and capacity limits were taken essentially verbatim from PG&E's NEM tariff in 2010. These requirements have changed a little bit, and so now there's some inconsistency between our tariff and PG&E's tariff. What we're proposing is that the way to keep these most consistent is simply to reference PG&E's net metering tariff and say that if PG&E finds the standards that PG&E specifies for what technologies and what type of installations are eligible for net metering are eligible with MCE as well. This also works out pretty well because PG&E is the point of interconnection for these customers. They're going to connect to PG&E's grid, not to MCE's equipment. And so as a result, we don't have a very strong capacity to be able to enforce any limitations that we might be specifying. It makes more sense to use PG&E's. Another bit of language that's been included in these proposed revisions is codifying our support of virtual net energy metering and aggregated net energy metering. Couple last language revisions here. One of the original tariff had language that referred to interconnection with MCE and application for net metering with MCE. These are things that customers don't need to do. They can simply apply for interconnection with PG&E and apply for net metering with PG&E, and then the account is automatically given to us and becomes part participating in our NEM program. One last thing here that we've proposed adding to the NEM tariff is a little bit of language that helps customers see exactly how PG&E is going to handle their NEM account while they're with MCE service. Things like that they will still receive a true-up for their delivery charges. This is not something that PG&E has been able to communicate very well with customers, and we felt that it might be helpful for it to be included in our NEM tariff. Customers are still encouraged in this language to consult with PG&E to get the most up-to-date information on the subject. Any questions?
I have a comment.
I have a question.
Why don't we start with Kate?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, not a question, but a comment. No, thanks very much for the report, Justin. I think it's fantastic the way this program is developed. And I particularly like the proposal to get rid of the net generator credit, and apply that money to solar installation rebates. I think that's a really excellent idea that would forward a lot of what we want to be doing. So, yeah, thanks for that.
Len.
My only comment is it's, as usual, pretty technical, and I mentioned this in the executive committee meeting, and I think you did a really nice job breaking it down. But for folks that are interested in putting solar on their roof and trying to understand it, I'm hoping that we can come up with something that Jamie can help with you to deliver something so people have it in bite-sized pieces they can understand without delving into the tariff and all the billing issues and all of that, just so you understand. You know, and maybe there's, in any event, there's a way to be able to market and sell that we're giving a better deal than PG&E, and here's why, and a few different bullet points, so people get that. So because bottom line is we want our customers doing that energy meeting, and it's a win-win for everyone all the way around if we can go. We went, what, we increased it 10 times from 2010 till now, from 250 to 2,500. So I hope in a year or two you're at 25,000. How about that? Wouldn't that be cool? Okay. Do you think that's unrealistic?
We got a lot of trees in there.
With $6,000 per video, Jimmy, I know you can do it.
Yeah, that is true. I would just note that we are able to condense it down into an easy to understand, easily digestible, and customer-friendly format. When we do community presentations, we've got it all on one slide with about 3 or 4 bullets. So, and if you check out the website, it shows an example of it.
Good, thank you.
I would just like to make one comment, because I'm a NEMS customer. I think one of the best things we can do as an agency for customers is to really emphasize on the communications side that if you are not a net generator, but you're actually a net user, even though you do have solar power, that those delivery charges are delivery charges. Because a lot of times people get very confused and say, wait a minute, I put solar power on my roof, and yet I'm still getting these sort of delivery charges. And I would imagine you get a lot of calls right to MCE with why is that the case. And I'm not sure the general public is fully vetted on these type of issues. And whatever we can do to sort of communicate that is, I think people really understand it when they're not a NEMS customer, because you can see that. But when you are a NEMS customer, there's sort of a little bit of an information gap that I sometimes sense.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for the comment. You're absolutely right. There is definitely a knowledge gap, and I think a lot of solar installations, unfortunately in some cases, they're simply installed by the installer, and there is not a lot of explanation of the billing. Talking to PG&E staff, even for their own customers, you hear that a lot from their staff too. There's definitely some new communications that need to be rolled out with this. PG&E is going to be doing some new communications as they're improving their net metering statements, the monthly statements that customers are going to get, and we are in discussions with them trying to ensure that we're participating in that process and able to communicate with them on how we can best serve these customers.
And maybe the reason why I say that is because what MCE is doing is they're truing up with the customer every single month, correct? Mm-hmm. But PG&E is not doing that. They're just creating an account that all of a sudden will build and build and build, and then come April, you might get a $1,000 bill that was simply for all their delivery charges that they rendered. And I can imagine come next true-up period, that would creates a lot of sort of questions and how all that gets resolved. I mean, I don't think the average customer understands that. That MCE
I
is
think
truing
the
up.
board member understands that.
So what's happening is, when you produce solar power, okay, and you get a bill, and you don't produce enough
Right.
solar power, okay, so you're using the solar power, MCE is still charging you for the amount of solar power, the amount of power that you're using every single month, so you're just paying your bill along. PG&E is not doing that. PG&E is saying, okay, you're a NEMS customer, but we're just gonna, and you had $100 in delivery charges, but we're gonna wait and wait and wait and wait. We're gonna true up after a whole year.
To see whether you become a net.
Right, you can go, but if
You could owe a lot of money, or maybe you get a lot of money, but you never get any money from PG&E. They wipe it out.
you see what I'm saying? There's a difference. You're on a different
You only
system.
need to pay them.
You're on a
They don't
different
pay you.
billing system than they're on, and yet it's coming on the same bill.
That's correct.
So whenever you have two systems on the same bill, you're gonna have this kind of, question mark that comes up. And in order to overcome that, you really have to pump the knowledge and the communication to the customer. Otherwise, they're just gonna.
Definitely correct. We've talked with our call center and made sure they're trained and capable of answering questions on just that very exact subject. I believe that PG&E's NEM tariff, how it works with third-party providers of electricity, requires that we do a monthly billing, whereas they continue to do their annual true-up for most customers. In some cases, PG&E has actually shifted to doing a monthly settlement for their virtual net energy metering customers, and they've given some suggestion that they may be trying to move to a monthly settlement in the long run. But in the interim, we've certainly made sure our customer service people are trained, and we can try to make some changes to the website as well to make that clear.
Do you think there could be a note or something inside the bill that would admonish people that from MCE once a month you're gonna get a true up, and it'll be less confusing, and once a year you're gonna get walloped with a huge charge and a lot of paper, and that's PG&E's fault?
That seems like a lot of text to fit into 3 lines of 80
I'm sure you can simplify it. Yeah, but you have the identity of all the NEMS customers. You can send them whatever you want. I mean, you can send them in paper, you can send them in emails. I mean, you know who they are.
You only have 25 customers. 2,500 customers.
2,500. 2,500. We
I
would.
mean, it's not like 125,000. 2,500 is a small.
2,500, right?
That's correct.
You can
Small
communicate
amount.
with them any way you want. And you don't need to go on the bill. I mean, just send them it.
Or, for example, once you get a new customer, have some explanation that goes out with their new service. I think that'd be a great thing to do.
I really like that idea. I think that would be a great thing to do. We do some extra communications for our NEM customers specifically that the other customers don't get, that focuses on special things for their account because they're a NEM customer, including the true-up letter, or not the true-up letter, the April cash-out letter. But I think it's a great idea to engage new NEM customers to let them know what they're doing.
We're a NEM customer. I'm just wondering, and I've been deep green since it was available, whether that we're automatically enrolled as a Marin Energy or Marin Clean Energy customer, or can you be getting Marin Clean Energy and then be enrolled as a PG&E, a net energy metering customer? In other words, can you have a split account or not?
So no, you can't, in short.
Okay, because to me personally, it's baffling. You get a PG&E bill and then you get a separate white envelope, which is sort of indecipherable of what's going on with your solar generation, and how the two interrelate is Greek to me. And I've got obviously some familiarity with it. Just went through a true-up recently, big bill, which was just astonishing to me. So, I mean, a lot of it is the communication and really getting it clear to the customer, but it's a challenging mission we've got, because it really is unclear, and it's really, there's a lot of conflicts between your PG&E bill, your true-up bill from PG&E on a monthly basis, and how it all interrelates, so.
And a big true-up bill can psychologically affect your impression of MCE as well, even though it's not an MCE bill.
One of the good
Funny how
things, one of the good things that we do have out of our billing is that some of those charges are being settled on a monthly basis. And so if a customer is used to seeing a $3,000 true-up bill, it may be that they're paying a little bit of that off every month, and when they get their true-up as an MCE customer, maybe they only have a $2,000 bill when they were expecting a $3,000. I've talked to some customers that said, well, I got my annual true-up from PG&E and I paid that off, and I'm still expecting a huge annual bill from MCE, and then when we tell them, oh, there isn't one, you've already been taking care of it over the course of the year, they're quite relieved to find that out.
But I think ultimately, integrating the two is really the way to go. Because just Larry's example is a great example. I think it's clearer for the customer, and the clearer you are for the customer, the better company you're going to be.
Yeah, and I don't think it's not this agency. I know part of it is integrating it with PG&E's billing system, but it's quite confusing.
What kind of steps can be taken toward that?
We actually have a unique opportunity, although it may be a longer game kind of opportunity, which is that NEM is being discussed at the CPUC, and kind of how that's going to evolve and what the new form of NEM is going to look like in the future. And we may have more opportunity as a participant in that process, rather than as somebody coming into a process that's already existed, to guarantee that CCA is treated equally and has the same opportunities for billing that the utility is.
Okay. Any other questions on this item or discussion? Okay, so you're asking us to approve the proposed revisions, Justin, is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
I'll move.
And I'll second.
All right, moved and seconded, all in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? That matter carries. Again, good work on your presentation. Item 10, and maybe keep us posted, you know, as PUC proceedings go forward, et cetera, on that issue. Item 10, budget adjustment for fiscal year 2013-14.
Sure, I'll take that. I'm Greg Morse, your newly voted for business analyst. I just wanted to bring to the board's attention that based on operational activity to date, the current budget as voted for back in March may not be quite correct. So I was looking to suggest that we move some of the funds internally, not actually changing the budget as a whole, but move some of the funds around internally to shore up these accounts. To that extent, I was looking to move $100,000 into the communications consultant and related expenses account from $75,000 from legal and $25,000 from staff. This has already been talked about at XCOM, and it was passed through there. It makes no impact on the budget itself. It's just simply moving budget from where there has been a slight deficit to, from where there has been a slight excess to where there is currently a slight deficit.
A lot of lawyers on this board, Greg. You're proposing to keep the legal budget.
I have talked to my lawyer about this.
Yeah, well, we often joked that Beth is actually she's actually two people. And
now I'm actually two people.
It's official.
And I still have to negotiate with Jamie that the videos are going to be regulatory in nature, so wait for that.
I I'd like to add a couple of comments, actually. Although Greg did a great job of introducing this, just a couple of things to augment. I think that our legal budget in the last year and a bit more than that has been, we've been able to achieve a lot of savings in that budget, and that's due in large part because our in-house staff are taking on an enormous workload and really have done an amazing job of transitioning things off of the external consultant plate and keeping them in-house. That said, we don't know if that will necessarily continue into the next year, so we'll be looking at that separately, but we're grateful to see that there's a little bit of extra in that budget to account for some of the need on the communication side, which relates to the work we've been doing in the last year, promoting deep green, promoting our energy efficiency campaigns, doing the joint cost comparison mailers, and some of the other items that came up during the year that were unanticipated. I think also the fact that we're under budget in our staff compensation line item is a good thing. We tend to be very conservative with spending and hiring and doing that really on an as-needed basis. So I think this is, it's an interesting story, that we're able to pull from these two line items and put more into communications for really getting the word out and promoting our program and achieving a lot of success in that area, which we want to continue.
Okay, any discussion? Members of the public? Doesn't look like that. So I need a motion.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Item 11, request from the County of Napa and City of Albany for membership analysis and consideration as members of MCE.
Great, so I'm going to introduce this item, and just by way of background, we have talked about potential expansion over the course of the last few years as our agency has really taken hold and grown in our success. We initially started with the request from the City of Richmond for consideration as a member. That was back in early 2011. And we spent about a year working with them about what that would look like, how that would unfold, and went through the process before making any future-based policy around what other expansion might happen. After the Richmond expansion was complete and we completely rolled out to customers, we spent some time talking about how it went at our board retreat in the fall. And your board approved policy 007, the new customer communities policy. And there's nothing sneaky about it. But it's very clear and effective. I think that the policy is included here in your board packet. We also discussed at the board retreat the MCE affiliate membership process. And just as a reminder, this new customer communities policy delineated two types of customer communities that could that we would consider working with as far as expansion goes. The first criteria was for the affiliate member, and the affiliate member was defined as a community that's within 30 miles of our existing jurisdiction and had a customer base or potential customer base of 40,000 or less. The reason for defining it in that way, after a lot of discussion with our executive committee and other members of the board, there was comfort with kind of a known quantity, similar to what we had achieved in Richmond, with an incremental expansion around the size of 40,000 or a little bit less, and close by, so that when we're wanting to do outreach, go to events frequently throughout the week, we're able to do that without too much drain on our existing staff time. So the affiliate membership process seemed very straightforward. We developed a step-by-step process for a potential affiliate member to follow. And so our discussion tonight is really going to be focused on two communities that have approached us through that affiliate membership process. I also just want to pause for a moment and point out that there is the special consideration membership category, which we delineate in the policy, but we have not yet developed a process for what a special consideration membership would look like. We have received a request, as many of you all know and probably read in the paper, that the City of San Francisco approached us expressing interest in exploring membership potentially. due to their size, they would fall into that special consideration membership. And so if we do receive further requests, a letter from the city and county of San Francisco, that's something we need to take up separately and potentially set policy on that type of expansion. But we're not doing that this evening. What we're going to focus on this evening is policy and process that's already been established by your board for affiliate members. The affiliate membership process has 7 steps that a community needs to take to be considered as a member, or to be added as a member, actually. The first step is the governing body of the community needs to submit a letter to the MCE Board, or now the MCE Board, and request consideration as a member. At the time that the letter is submitted, staff needs to then go through an evaluative process to determine if internal resources are available to consider the request and ensure there wouldn't be any impact to core agency functions if we spend time pursuing this request. So those first 2 steps have happened for these 2 jurisdictions that we're going to be talking about tonight, the County of Napa and the City of Albany. So step 3 is that the request is then submitted to the MEA Board, or MCE Board, to consider adherence to the criteria that are shown in the process document, and to authorize the initiation of the membership analysis. So the membership analysis then, if approved by your board, the membership analysis would be the next step. And it would be conducted after an agreement is signed between MCE and the interested community to ensure that the interested community will cover the costs of that study. And when we went through this study with the city of Richmond, the cost came in a little under $40,000. So we'd be looking at something in that range. Since it's been done before, it might come in a little bit less than that. The agreement or the contract would include technical analysis to look at the economic impact of adding the agency, really looking at the cost of energy at this point in time, looking at the load of the new community, the customer characteristics, how much commercial, how much industrial, residential, etc. Plugging that into our model and determining if the economic impact would be positive or negative. So that's a very straightforward quantitative analysis that we've done before and would conduct again with these communities. Then there would also be funds in this contract, and that's part of what was in the $40,000 agreement with Richmond, to cover any other staff time. And that includes things like going to city council meetings, answering questions, responding to inquiries that may come up through the exploratory process. So all of that would be covered through a contract with the agency. And that would be step 4. Step 5 would be presenting the results of the membership analysis and letting both the interested community and our board know what the results of that study are. We would be looking at both the qualitative and quantitative criteria in presenting information. So I don't want to belabor this too long, but I do want to kind of run through quickly what criteria we would be assessing if we go through this membership study. One of the important things would be making sure that the MCE allowing for service in the MCE, allowing for MCE service in the new community will result in a projected net rate reduction for our existing customer base. That's one of the fundamental things that we would be looking for. We would also look to see if offering service in the new community would enhance the strength of local programs, including an increase in distributed generation and an accelerated greenhouse gas reduction on a larger scale. Including the new community in our service area would increase the amount of renewable energy being used in the California energy market, that there would be an increase in opportunities to launch and operate energy efficiency programs, and reduce energy consumption and reliance on fossil fuels. That goes towards our greenhouse gas goals. And that there are new opportunities to deploy local solar and other distributed generation through our net energy metering tariff, our feed-in tariff, and also any locally owned projects that we would want to develop, such as the Richmond port that we're exploring right now. The other criteria that we've listed here are that there would be greater demand for jobs and economic activity from the growth and expansion in our service, and that it's likely to create a stronger voice for MCE at the state and regulatory level. So those are all things that would be assessed as part of the membership analysis, and would then be presented for the governing body of the new jurisdiction to go through the final stages. The final stages, which are outlined in step 6 and step 4, are for the new entity, the new city or town, to approve a resolution requesting membership and the ordinance that's required to launch a CCA program. And then the MCE board would adopt a resolution authorizing the membership, and we would go through the process of submitting an implementation, updating our implementation plan, which is a formality we've gone through a few times with the addition not only of Richmond, but also the addition of Larkspur, Novato, Corte Madera, and Ross. So that's sort of an overview of the process that an affiliate member is expected to go through for consideration. As you can tell, it's not a quick overnight process. It takes many months, as it did with Richmond, and that doesn't even get into the procurement that would need to happen after that, and then of course customer noticing and all of the prep work for that. So this is an undertaking that would be not happening all at once, but would be a deliberate process that occurs over the coming months. So at this point, I wanted to shift gears a little bit and just tell you a little bit about the two communities that have requested membership and some of the interactions that we've had, and then answer questions about that. The county of Napa spans 788 miles, and the unincorporated population of the county of Napa is approximately 28,000. And that accounts for about 20% of the total Napa County population. Those are just some basic stats. It's located, well, you all know where it's located. I won't get into that. I think two things you may not know, though, is that the county of Napa has in place a climate action plan, which is, I think, a very good one and uniquely tailored to the area where they have a lot of agricultural activity, particularly in the grape sector. They also have an environmental purchasing policy in place, as well as a number of other sustainability initiatives. And I remember actually going up there as early as in the late 90s, there was a lot of innovative sustainability discussion going on among in the vineyards, and looking at ways to increase the sustainability practices there. So there may be some interesting lessons learned there, some best practices that could be shared with some of our other jurisdictions. Certainly there is some shared goals that we have as far as protecting the environment, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, and promoting renewable energy. The County of Napa is very interested in having choice available in their community, and that, along with their sustainability goals and initiatives, I think is the driving force behind their request for consideration as a member. By contrast, their size would be less than the city of Richmond a little bit, so that's worth noting. The other jurisdiction that's approached us is the city of Albany. It is a 22 square miles in size. Its population is approximately 18,500, so it's a much more of a dense community, obviously. Most of you probably know where it's located, but just in case, it's just southeast of where we are. It's a little to the southeast of Richmond, so pretty close by. I think there are a couple of things happening in the city of Albany that I think are of interest on the sustainability front. They established a sustainability committee in 2012 to provide leadership, technical assistance, education, and outreach to members of the public, schools, local businesses, and city agencies on a lot of innovative programs that promote sustainability through energy conservation, solid waste reduction, recycling, and I won't belabor the point, but they have some interesting initiatives going on, as well as a green building ordinance to foster use of energy efficiency and environmentally friendly building techniques. The interest in our agency coming from the city of Napa is similar, I think, to the interest from Napa. Albany is interested in having choice in their community. They're very eager to find ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions in their community. They are close to Richmond and therefore have heard a lot of good things about our program, and a lot of folks in their community are asking why, if they could have access to the same type of program that Richmond does. So that's kind of an overview of those two communities, and I think this would be a good place to pause and answer any questions.
Don, how many customers would actually, you've indicated population figures, but how
Yeah.
many customers and how that would relate to kind of Richmond's about 30,000 customers.
That is correct, yeah. So the population is typically double what the number of accounts would be. Because you have, in an average household is about 2 people. In some cases you have more, in some cases you have less. So we would need to do the analysis to determine exactly how many accounts that would be. But
Because the population of Richmond is more, isn't it about 100,000 or 90,000?
no, it's closer to 60,000.
Interesting.
So in addition to kind of dividing in half the population, you also would account for about a 20% opt-out rate. So that would bring it down a little bit further as well. Once we, if we were to once the study is underway, we will know what the number of accounts is pretty early in the process, because the first thing that happens is a request to PG&E for usage data, and that's the point at which we get the number of accounts.
Why don't we start with Bob and then Ken?
Don, you're asking us to approve tonight the beginning of the initial analysis for both jurisdictions?
Yes.
And is that the recommendation of the staff?
Yeah, that's the recommendation of staff, based on the information that we've collected and the time that would be involved in the process of conducting the study.
Does that infer that from your point of view it's realistic for your staff to be able to handle 2 such requests simultaneously?
Yeah, the technical analysis is relatively straightforward, and is something, fortunately, that there's not any strong deadlines around getting it done at any particular point, but it doesn't take a huge number of hours to do that. I think what's more time consuming is the outreach component, and structuring the timing of that will take a little more thought.
Okay.
I have 2 questions. I remember in the executive committee we talked about this. Has there been a decision as to whether or not each new member gets a seat on the board? The other question I have is your affiliate membership talks about community of $40,000 or less. Both of these applicants seem to qualify for that, but in the letter that we got from Napa, the county of Napa, they said there's 5 other cities who might be interested may or may not be interested in joining as well. And so I guess the question is, do you bulk all those together and get more than 40,000, or you take them individually? How would you address that if one of the incorporated cities of Napa wanted to join, which would bring the 2 of them above 40,000, because I don't think you really have a category for over 40,000.
No, those are great questions. So I'll try to take them in order there. So the first question was about having a seat on the board.
Right.
And you're right that there was discussion about that in our executive committee meeting after the board meeting. We talked about the possibility of giving 1 seat per county. We talked about the possibility of new members after Richmond not having any representation on the board, but simply having a service in their
There's
community.
also a rotating thing like the UN.
Yeah, there was the possibility of rotating. And I think that the executive committee determined that there were enough problems with any of those pieces that really there didn't seem to be a real benefit to doing that. And it was determined that the best approach would just be to allow a new member to have a seat on the board. We didn't want to create a scenario where there was like a second-class citizen feeling or a lack of local representation. I think that was another factor. And we also thought a lot about other agencies, like ABAG, for example, where there are a large number of members, and that's okay. There are ways to make adjustments if needed. delegate decision-making to certain committees if needed at some point in the future. But at this point, the size seems to be working fine, and there are quite a few regional communities or regional bodies that have been able to exist with a larger numbers.
The other is if Napa, if two entities in Napa come, do you treat them as one or two, or what would you do?
Yeah, well, the studies would be conducted separately at the time that a request actually comes in. So the county of Napa has been clear that their request is simply for their own governing body, their own jurisdiction. They can't speak for the cities. There may be some cities in Napa that are interested in approaching us, but we don't yet have a letter from them, so they aren't at the step one stage yet.
So you wouldn't put them together?
No, and if they, if they came in together, well, they didn't come in together, so I think it's kind of a moot point. But if another request comes in, then we need to go through that evaluative process to determine if the timing is right for that type of request, or if we need to wait until we've completed the process with the first two.
Thanks.
Len.
Perhaps my question is too far down the road, but with Napa and with Sonoma coming online, and I heard you say Napa County is interested in competition, has any thought been given if we were to go forward and Napa County became an affiliate member, and then Sonoma County wanted to offer their CCA services there as well, there's potential they could have 3 power providers there or something. Maybe it wouldn't make sense for Sonoma to try to edge in with PG&E and MCE there. I don't know, but it's just because they're so close geographically next to each other. It almost seems like a more natural partner for Napa County to consider Sonoma CCA. Has any thought been given to that?
Yeah, when I met with the representatives from the county of Napa, they talked about that a little bit, and their thinking was that the Sonoma process is still so early that they really aren't ready to look at expansion beyond their boundaries, because they need to do a lot of internal phasing in and expansion on that front. Napa is very eager and excited to get the process rolling soon, rather than wait for something where there's an uncertainty around timing. They like the idea of moving forward. I can't imagine a scenario where the County of Napa would want to join both the MCE Joint Powers Authority and the Sonoma County Joint Powers Authority. I guess maybe they could, but I don't know. That's never come up before. I think the alternative is more likely, which is there are a lot of other communities in the North Bay that will be looking for ways to get CCA in their community, and so it's possible that Sonoma will get requests when they're ready in the next few years from other communities.
Just one follow-up. So do you see a competitive advantage? Sorry?
Reporter, you want to follow up question?
I was getting permission from the chair. It's polite to ask it before it's clear. We'll do this to the very end.
Yeah, we
can see.
You did want to
So, do you see a competitive advantage, Don, since San Francisco doesn't seem to get its act together yet, Sonoma's in its fledgling state, and we're this smashing success, and now we have all these folks that want to date us. And so,
watch it, be really careful.
Yeah, I know. Do you see a competitive advantage for MCE to pick off some of these jurisdictions that fit the 007 policy as quickly as we can?
I think as a public agency, we're not
imperialistic.
Thinking about trying to edge out other communities. That could be the case. I think the only reason why...
I mean, it was actually a serious question, because I'm just saying, we're ready to go, and, and I've been told by lots of our suppliers, the people I've talked to, that come visit, bigger is better, because now we have, in a lot of ways, we can get better deals and power deals and do this.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, and I think the reason why we don't have to worry about edging out or territory or that sort of thing is that there's how many cities and towns are there in California? Thousands.
400 and something, but in the Bay Area there's 110 cities.
Yeah, hundreds. So, and right now there's only one CCA, so I think there's a long way to go before we get into concern about that. But I think you're making a very excellent point, which is worth sort of echoing, and that is that where the market is right now, The addition of new communities, it appears, and we need to do the analysis to confirm this, but it does appear that the addition, incremental addition of our service territory would allow us to keep our rates lower.
Once you get the energy, once you require it for it.
Don, my recollection is that at the retreat or the strategic planning, that we considered affiliate memberships and adopted a policy which specifically addressed board membership and said no. Was I someplace else?
We did not take any action on board membership at the retreat.
We didn't.
Right. We kind of brought it up for discussion and brainstorming, but we took no action on that. We felt like we needed more time in XCOM and then maybe coming back to the board to really flesh out that piece.
So that's, all right, so that's open at this point, and a determination hasn't been made, thumbs up or thumbs down, as to board membership, because I remember one of the things about which we were concerned is just the potential unwieldiness, assuming that we continue to expand, and I think that, you know, that these applications show that we're going to, or we're going to have the choice. And so it seems to me that that we ought to, as a board and as a policy challenge, address what's going to happen governance-wise. Because if we do continue to broaden and there become more members, we're going to have to move over to the Veterans Hall to have meetings.
Yeah, that issue has not been resolved.
Yeah, and when we discussed this at XCOM, we actually brought a proposal to XCOM that had two different options. One was to allow a seat on the board, well, it was three options. One was to allow a seat on the board, one was to not allow a seat on the board, and one was kind of a middle ground approach where you had one per county that rotated on an annual basis. XCOM determined and provided direction that we didn't want to move forward on changing the structure, which meant that our existing JPA agreement, which allows for all members to have a seat on the board, wouldn't be changed.
Right.
So we haven't come to the board with a request to change the JPA agreement, which means that at this point, any new members that get added get a seat on the board. If we want to have more discussion about that, I think anytime we could do that. We could bring it to XCOM and discuss which strategy makes the most sense to bring to the board. But in the discussion that we had, there really wasn't a strong consensus or really any push from the members of that committee to make any change to the JPA agreement.
I mean, Don, even the name affiliate member somewhat begs the question.
Right, it does. I mean, it suggests a different status. I mean, by its title.
It's really more referred to, I might be using it colloquially in the wrong way, but it's the affiliate membership process is what we are referring to it as. So there's the special consideration membership process and the affiliate membership process. If we wanted to give this member a different type of classification, we would need to do that in the JPA agreement with the change. And Greg has proposed language already, which we can look at if folks want to.
As a follow-up on Ford's point, though, Don, if we were to vote tonight to move forward with these two cities, we would in essence be grandfathering them into the policy they get a board seat, because I don't think you could have them spend money down this process and then say 2 months from now, oh, by the way, we decided that you're not going to get a vote.
Or another thing that I was thinking was, if it's not determined, at the very minimum, that needs to be disclosed up front and center, so that there's not any kind of a surprise like that. Because that would just be something that would generate horrible bad faith unnecessarily.
So I guess one question for the board is there a sense that we need to resolve that issue now before even entertaining?
I don't think you need to resolve it, but I think you need to indicate to the two applicants that it's a matter that's under discussion. I think it's completely clear the larger you make the board, the riskier it is to get a quorum and the more unwieldy it is. And, you know, as much as I heartily look forward to having the organization grow, I think for all the good reasons, for the appropriate cities and counties. I think we really need to think about how the governance of the board and the executive committee and those other subcommittees is going to work. And I think as a result, I think you need to tell them that we are considering this, and we'll keep them in the loop as to what's going on, but it's something that and they'll understand that. I mean, they all have boards, they all have quorum issues. I mean,
Well, I mean, it may change their desire to go forward or not, but, you know, that's a choice that's theirs, and they should be on notice and be entitled to make that.
you think they wouldn't want to be a member of MCE Marine Energy if they didn't have a seat on the board, but they still had their community benefit from acquiring the energy?
I don't know. I'm not
I don't
in their shoes, but that's an informed choice that they should be able to make.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
I think that we should, the fact that we have inquiry from this, and we've got a policy from this, and we're not going to tabletop resolve this issue of governance tonight. It's a worthy issue, but I think that we should encourage these applications, and if we really think about it hard, there's probably room within this very room and the infrastructure that we have in place to add 2 more folks to the table here.
Absolutely.
Can be done. If it becomes 5 or 6 or 7 more, well, then that's maybe we're starting to get there. But right now, I think we can handle Albany and County of Napa one day sitting at this table with us.
I think we do need to have a conversation though on governance, but also be open to a large board. I mean, I sit on BCDC and we have 21 people on that commission.
Right.
Not that that's necessarily a good model, but it works, and
We see
people
how
do
popular
come to
that
the
is.
commission meetings. So it's possible to deal with a room full, with a room of a lot of people, but I think it is something we need to give some thought to.
So Don, sorry, go ahead.
So it's slightly off topic.
Yeah.
I want to revisit just one point. Don, if it's your recommendation or preliminary view that the growth is ultimately a good thing, could you just comment a little bit about what sorts of factors or why you believe that to be true?
Yeah, I think that the primary reason is tied to our mission, which is to achieve greenhouse gas reductions and get more renewable energy onto the grid. If we just stayed in the first little 8 cities and towns of the county where we had started, we wouldn't have achieved the types of GHG reductions and renewable energy increases that we've been able to achieve. So that's the primary reason. The secondary reason is economics. So if right now our commercial costs for all of our commercial customers is lower than customers of PG&E. If we hadn't added Richmond, that would not be the case.
Mm-hmm.
Our costs would be higher. That cost difference is saving money for our cities and towns, our schools, our businesses. So economics is the second reason. And then the third reason is our voice. So when we show up in Sacramento, we often get sort of waved off as, oh yeah, you guys are Marin, you can kind of do whatever you want. You're a little entitled community and you don't really matter that much because you don't represent California. Well, now that we have Richmond in our jurisdiction, we get a lot more serious conversations, and we get taken a little more seriously. When folks hear that we're looking to expand a little bit further, we get taken even more seriously, and that impacts our access to decision makers, both in the governor's office and at the Capitol, but also at the CPUC. And our interface at the CPUC has, impacts our agency in a lot of ways, both economic and policy-wise. So that's really the third area where I think there's an impact. And then there are related benefits. Our programs can grow more when we have more diversity in the communities that we serve. Our energy efficiency program has been tremendously successful, particularly in the multifamily sector, and we're able to identify more locations for local solar rollout. We've had a lot of difficulty in Marin with local solar installations. We seem to be finding an easier path in our newest community, and that may be the case with some additional expansion. I think with that said, I think we all agree that incremental expansion is the right approach, and large expansion, doubling, tripling in size, doesn't make sense for this agency. At this time, maybe not for a very long time or ever. There's definitely a local connection that makes our agency very strong, and I think it's important for us to continue that as we grow.
So I just have just a question about the two particular agencies that are interested in joining. Is there strong political support among the electeds? This is not a close council vote or supervisor vote. Is it a strong support to proceed with this?
Yeah, it was a unanimous.
It's also because we're also, even though they're going to be paying us for some, it's going to be our time and our effort, and we want to make sure that at the end of the day, there's really strong support behind.
Yeah,
behind
that is a really great question, and because we do get a lot of inquiries from a lot of communities that have one interested council member, or a lot of interested advocates, or maybe two interested council members. That's why step one of the affiliate membership process is a letter from the full governing body requesting membership. My understanding is that when NAPA considered this, it was a unanimous vote. I do understand that there was one council member that wasn't present, so I'm not sure what his vote may or may not have been, but that was a unanimous vote. The city of Albany was actually present for that vote, and it was unanimous.
Good to hear.
Okay. So Don, it sounds like you will clearly communicate to both jurisdictions that the governance issue has not been fully resolved at this point. Any further questions or discussion on this item?
One comment.
Yeah, Ford.
I think it was Victor Hugo was the one who said nothing is as powerful as an idea whose time has come. And these inquiries show that that's true with respect to our objective and what we're doing. And I think that's great.
Well put. Would someone like to make a motion?
Sounds so classical.
I know.
I move the resolution.
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? That matter carries. Good work, everyone. Okay, item 12, policy 009. Not quite a sex.
But thanks for your time. I'm going to make this quick. And it is a serious matter. It's very important. It was a pretty exciting and lengthy process for the organization, but we did discuss it at the November XCOM, and so we had full support to bring it to the board. It's fairly straightforward, but really what we're doing here is trying to formalize an IT security policy based on a lot of the ongoing practices that have been in place with regards to customer information, internal controls, infrastructure, staff management, vendor management, etc. So what we're doing here tonight is building on really sound practices based on initial program implementation and enhanced components of that based on a pretty broad-based audit that we went through with an external firm, and we've since applied many of the enhancements there, and I'm going to go through a little bit of the process there, but I'm going to try to make it short and sweet. So with the expansion into Richmond, again, we grew our staff, we grew our customer base, and so of course we grew our contractor base to try to serve, better serve more of our programs and better serve more of a diverse customer base. So with that, there comes an increased liability. The more external parties you're working with, the larger subset of data. And then of course, as we grow near with the onset of having smart meter data in our hands, and the use of that, the analysis of that, the transfer of that, all of those things considered, in addition to some other demand response opportunities, etc., mean that we need to have super sound IT practices in place. And with that, we consulted with the firm, actually, Trust CC, and that's a firm that our bank referred us to, which is great because we didn't have to go through the process of spending a huge amount of money that we didn't need to essentially customize a program to audit our internal controls, our IT infrastructure, our staff policies based on the guidance from this firm, Trust CC. And so we went through that process this summer. I should also note before I go on, we already adhere to the sort of legal and regulatory requirements that we're required to via the CPUC. We adopted a policy in December of last year. So this is going above and beyond what we need to do, but that's not uncommon for this agency. And so it's the right thing to do. It's what we wanted to do. So I'll just enhance that point before I go further. So this summer we went through a process to be audited. We determined there were a few areas that we needed to make improvements. Again, keeping in mind those improvements that were recommendations are based on banking standards, which are far more stringent than what we're currently required to adhere to. So in our mind's eye, there were just real good add-ons to consider and to implement. So we've since done that. We have just a little bit of additional work to do to sort of meet the full recommendations of this IT audit, but we've pretty much completed 90% of that work. A big component of it was some probing, some phishing, as it's called, a phishing exercise to the staff that was sort of dramatic and a little bit stressful, just because I had to put everyone on the spot and send an email out asking for donations to a very, very just cause, which was a total ploy to see if anybody clicked on a suspicious link and then donated funds, or tried to donate funds to this cause, and then allowed this external party access to our server. And so it was a dramatic scene. I won't reenact it, but Beth was a star of that show. And that's good. She's our legal director, so she reacted the way you should, and it was really quite a day. So with that phishing exercise, in all seriousness, that's a big part of what they're trying to do. The staff couldn't know, Don couldn't even know. And so we scored really well, actually, having said all that. We did really well. There was only one initial response, which they were quite impressed by. Based on our size, based on our agency and how much we've grown in the last year, it was a real good sign. Following that, we had an internal staff training, and everybody got a chance to kind of walk through the real threats that are out there in the cyber world, and the threats that we really need to take seriously. Again, we did a lot of the work to make the improvements we needed to, and for, the main point to take away with this is formalizing this policy really allows for staff to refer to a set of guidelines, operational guidelines, and then a policy, and also share that with our stakeholders, board, and the public, that the key ingredient to keeping safe is really internal management and keeping those sound and in place, and this policy allows us to have something formal to follow. So I think that before I go any further, are there any questions thus far? I'm not going to read the whole policy. It's long. It's really self-explanatory, and I feel like I've walked us through it. Does anyone have questions?
Questions, anyone?
I think being in security.
And this is something we did go over in XCOM.
Yeah, we reviewed it in XCOM.
Okay, great.
And I have way too much information to share. I will add, and I think it's important. We are a public agency. We like the open source concept, and with that, we've gone through an exercise which may be really beneficial for some of the munis that you represent, or other stakeholders. I'd be happy to share some of the learnings and the key takeaways that really do make things a bit more safe. Probably you have a lot of them in place, but you may benefit from some of them, so I'm happy to share that information. It'll not be something that's on our website by any means, but it's certainly something we can share because we've gone through a learning process and really benefited from it.
Great. Any public comment? Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion.
I'll move.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That matter carries. Item 13, policy 10-010, infants in the workplace.
Great. So this is another great addition to the organization. This is more along the lines of our commuter benefit policy that I had the opportunity to work on, which was great earlier this year. And this is really a way to further strengthen our organization and bolster employee retention. It's something that is quite innovative, and yet, to my surprise, going through the research process, there's over 185 organizations throughout the U.S. that have a infants in the workplace policy for many years, and with very, very high success with staff, and very little sort of onus on the agency. So I was surprised by that, that metric, and certainly being MEA, we like to look for, progressive and really sound.
No, excuse me, it's MCE now.
Oh, sorry.
You gotta be current.
Thank you. Actually, that was a test. That was my
We're listening closely to every word that you're saying.
That was your fishing exercise, so you did well. Good. So I meant to do that. MCE. Well, and this is also written before we've changed our name officially, so the packet went out a week ago.
Yeah, but you can think on the feet.
You're right.
Okay?
You're right. Thank you. So anyhow, MCE is one of those agencies that certainly likes to look for progressive and really uniquely customized ways to enhance not only customer programs, but staff programs. And so this is certainly one of them, the Infants in the Workplace. Seems like a great fit. We do have some examples from folks on our board and folks on our staff that have seen this in practice in their previous positions and has said it's worked out quite well. I will say that unbeknownst to me before our last executive committee meeting where we did vet this opportunity and decided to bring it to the full board for approval, that this has been something the agency's been looking to do for a long time, and it's now sort of the right timing given our staff that's over doubled to put this into place and to formalize a policy that again just enhances a great retention strategy. It's very simple. It's really, it says it, very simply that the new parent will be able to bring their infant to work for the first 6 months or when the infant begins to crawl, whichever comes first. And so that staff person will be able to, subject with the approval with their supervisor, and the employee in good standing with the agency will be able to bring the infant to work again, and forever, whichever comes first, 6 months expiration or the baby starts to crawl, they will be able to then look after the infant in the workplace. Of course, there are lots of details with this policy that are worth mentioning that we've already vetted and have in place in terms of liability forms and sort of registration forms to have emergency contact information in place, a designated staff person to be there as your backup. Obviously, it's a sort of communal acknowledgement that the agency needs to recognize with that staff person that if this doesn't work out for whatever reason, that it becomes a problem for other staff or supervision, that would be taken into consideration and perhaps a change of that benefit would take place. So it's with consideration that this needs to be sort of a mutually beneficial benefit in place. And so with that in mind, let me see if I've missed anything else. I think that pretty much covers it. We talked about it in November. I can answer any detailed questions about kind of like the programmatic.
You're gonna set up playpens everywhere?
Not everywhere.
Do you have room for this?
We do.
Not
It's subject to the employee and their location in the office and the spatial relationship that would make the most sense, and subject to supervisory approval. And so we're not going to have playpens everywhere. We're not going to have them in the conference rooms. This right now seems like a unique fit for some of the secured closed office space that we have. And so that's been taken into consideration.
Yeah, it's a neat program which you really have to think about, because I worked at a company that let a husband hire the wife, and then we fired the wife and the husband got really, really upset. You got to be real careful if you're going to make a decision as to whether or not, don't grimace. You really have to be careful. You can make a decision as to whether or not you're going to let a mother or father bring the child there in addition to other children that are already allowed to be there. You know, saying no to one person when others are there is sometimes really, really hard. The more difficult thing is to tell a mother or father that they can no longer have their child there because the child is disruptive. Just understand, well, I have nothing against this policy. You got to be really careful, because you're dealing with something that is as strong a feeling as between two people as you're ever going to get. And you can create good feelings or you can create hurt feelings if you look arbitrary.
I will say that a lot of that consideration, while there's a whole lot more that can go into it, is really detailed in the liability waiver and sort of registration form, if you will, that acknowledges the key
Well, I'm
components.
not talking about the kid plugging his finger into a
No,
electric
not
socket.
even that, not even that, just I mean, we've taken into consideration the forms by which an employee would sign up for the program. The liability waiver discusses, and these, again, are not unique to MEA. These have been vetted and tested in all the other agencies.
Yeah, it's not
I'm sorry,
liability.
MCE, thank you.
Yeah, I'm not talking about liability. I'm talking about emotion. I'm not talking
Sure.
about legal liability. I'm talking about emotional liability.
Well, and I think it establishes with the staff person and the supervisor that while forms and liability and all that don't really test emotion,
Right.
at least the agency is covered, and the understanding is put into place and signed upon before the infant comes to the office. So it just needs to be a solid consideration between the supervisor to say, yes, this seems like a good fit for the position. Let's go through the forms, make sure you acknowledge that.
They don't interview the kid, do they?
Actually, we were looking to start that policy.
Yeah, let me add just a little bit to that. The way the process would work is that an employee would first need to approach their supervisor and ask, is this something that could be offered to me given my job description? For some positions, it wouldn't be workable. You know, if someone is, well, there are a couple of factors that would make it not workable. In some companies, it's safety issues. You know, if you're working in a hard hat area, there's safety issues there, obviously. In our agency, we don't have that sort of issue, but we might have someone who's dealing with the public on a frequent basis that has to be ready to deal with walk-ins and that sort of thing. That might be a difficult arrangement for someone to be caring for an infant at the same time. So up front, that's the first step. And then the second step is to look at a participation form. And the participation form includes very clear language that this is really based on the ability of the arrangement to work. And if it's not working at any time, the participation agreement can be terminated by the employer, and that's very clear up front. And I think that's really important.
Well, it is important, but just remember, when you're going to tell, let's assume it's a mother. It could be a father, it could be a mother. Let's assume it's a mother. If you're going to tell a mother, one, we don't want your child here, but Mary's child is here, okay? Two, I don't know how many of you, I know you do, I don't know how many of the other ones have kids, but the other one is, if you're going to let little Billy come here in his little Rocky thing, and then...
No, you need to understand something. They're less than 6 months old. They're lying prone.
No, but they're in a thing. They're in a little thing.
Whatever they're doing.
Or they could be a jolly
They
jumper.
cry
They could
and
be
they
a lot of
scream and
things.
they make
But
messes.
even,
They don't-
the kid's not going to be upset. What you're doing is you're telling a mother, let's assume it's a mother, you're telling a mother that their child doesn't fit in here and has to go home. Just understand, that is never, ever going to go over well, no matter how true it is.
It doesn't mean not to be the policy.
The policy is...
All right, I think we've covered that.
Yeah.
Good job, good job.
Nice.
So,
Right, and I think a lot of it really is communication that's going to happen between the supervisor and the person making the
It's
request
not a-
and
I want
going through the
I
form,
want
so
to mark that
expectations are
comment.
set.
I want that comment marked, so that when something happens, I can say I told you so.
all right. Unless there's any new ground to cover by anyone or the public. Emily, thank you for your work on this proposal.
So I move adoption
Okay.
of policy 0110.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? That matter carries. Thanks again. Item 14. What we've all been waiting for.
Exactly. So I actually didn't, because of how long the agenda was, I decided to not prepare slides. So I actually only have 4 quick items to touch on, and they're going to be quite a bit shorter than usual. So just
And
to
just
give
for
people.
the public, this of course would be the regulatory.
This is the regulatory update. This is the dessert of the board meeting. That happens every time. So the thing that everybody waits with me.
Saving the best for last.
Exactly, thank you, saving the best for last. So I'll just buzz through a couple of quick items. One is we talked extensively at the last board meeting regarding the proposed decision that is out regarding CCAs and energy efficiency and how those programs are run. That decision has been held, and we understand that there may be some modifications that are coming out in the next week or two, but we're just waiting for the process to sort of pan out. So it could be...
Held means it's not implemented?
That's correct, that it won't be voted on. Sorry, I just went into commission jargon. It was held from the commission's agenda, and so it's slated for the December 19th agenda, but it may end up being held again till early next year.
And is that the electrical versus gas energy efficiency decision?
That's correct.
Okay.
So it relates to what types of programs CCAs can run for energy efficiency, whether they can be electric or gas, what type of programmatic rules apply to CCAs. And so we'll keep you posted.
I'm sorry, could you remind me whether you have already received feedback as to whether changes to the tentative decision are going to be made, and if so, in what degree? Have you already reported on that?
Yeah, so there have been no revisions yet made to the proposed decision, but there will be revisions made to reflect the comments of the parties. And so we are waiting for that to be released, and to the extent that we need to have additional communications with additional offices, we will.
But there aren't like tentative revisions. In other words, there was a single meeting which I was with you at, and then maybe telephone calls, but there's no true indication of where the PUC is going with it, right?
That's correct.
And we won't get that indication until at best a couple weeks from now.
That's correct.
Got it.
So the way that the Public Utilities Commission works is there's actually a website. The changes to the proposed decision don't actually get emailed out to the parties. They appear on a website. And so you wait for them to appear on the website. And, you know, from a procedural perspective, I asked the assigned office, and the indication was that, you know, the expectation it would be a week or two for those revisions to come out.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah. And hopefully it comes with a big red CCA bow on it, but you know, you never know. I'm not gonna hold my breath. Another item is regarding the petition for rulemaking that MEA really led a charge on this past year, which ended up being denied. The decision which denied the petition for rulemaking made reference to a workshop that would take place regarding exit fees. And this workshop and this approach has finally made some traction at Energy Division. And so we expect to see a workshop set up in January regarding the PCIA. And that appears to be the trend. We haven't received information from it, but from several different sources and several different proceedings, administrative law judges and the like, it appears that there will be a discussion in January of the PCIA, and hopefully there will be some next steps and action items that would result from that workshop.
And can I ask you, what's a workshop mean? Who participates? What's the format? Do you have any sense of that, or does it just depend on the issue?
Yeah, it really depends on the issue, because sometimes there are workshops that are associated with specific proceedings, and this would be a workshop that doesn't have a specific proceeding. So in essence, the commission would set a date. They would send out a notice to various different proceedings and say, everybody's welcome to attend this workshop, and here's the agenda. And they would walk through, you know, hopefully it'll be a full day. And as a result of that, you know, often in proceedings, there would be a workshop report afterwards, which would get served to a service list, where you identify what happened in that workshop, and you come up with next steps. So it's unclear exactly what the process is, because it's not exactly a defined process, but that it's actually very positive that the commission is taking proactive steps on this, and we look forward to discussing these fees that are really impacting our customers.
Great, thanks.
Is any more questions on that workshop item.
Can I just add one thing, that we're sort of looking at taking a multi-pronged approach on this issue, so we might be contacting some of you for letters from your jurisdictions regarding your thoughts and feelings on the PCIA in order to bolster our cases. So expect some communication from us shortly.
And we've also been communicating with other entities, including community organizations and others. And exit fees and the non-bypassable charges paid by customers is a very technical matter, but people who understand it end up getting very fired up about it. And that's what we found. So, you know, we look forward to hearing those voices coming forward, because this is no longer just an issue for large commercial and industrial customers like it is under direct access, but we're talking about residential customers, we're talking about small customers, and we're talking about a very different portfolio. So I think this is going to be, hopefully we will see positive outcomes and at least next steps coming out of this workshop process. The next item that I wanted to touch base on is the long-term procurement.
I'm sorry, can I ask you another question? Who creates the agenda for the workshop, and can you request an item be put on the agenda?
Yeah, so the agenda is being developed by Energy Division, and we have had a conversation with Energy Division about that.
Gotcha, thank you.
In the long-term procurement plan, track 4, this relates to the SONGS outage in Southern California. The proposal in that area is to have all replacement resources for SONGS receive cost allocation mechanism treatment, so non-bypassable charge treatment. And that would impact significantly future CCA customers in the Southern California Edison and San Diego gas and electric service territories. So obviously we do not operate in those service territories, but we're fighting the fight for other CCAs so that we can pave the way so that CCA is viable in those areas. We submitted an extensive brief on the cost allocation mechanism, and based on the record of the proceeding, we do not believe that the investor-owned utilities have met the criteria for having CAM apply. The investor-owned utilities have asked for 100% CAM treatment. To date, we have received 3 motions to strike of our brief from PG&E, SDG&E, and SCE. And so I believe we have successfully struck a nerve. It appears that the utilities do not want information regarding the legal and factual faults with their CAM arguments.
Are they arguing standing, or what? How are they?
No, they're actually, one of them actually, it was SDG&E's requested striking essentially including all of the legal arguments behind CAM and up through our introduction. So I think that there maybe was more of a visceral reaction in that circumstance.
On what basis though?
Yeah.
Oh, they said that it was out of scope, but actually what's being determined is what the cost allocation should be for replacement resources, so it actually is within scope. So it's been an interesting experience, and I think that we might have just set a record for how many sticks you can poke in how many eyes at once. So they're hopefully this at least raises awareness at the Commission for the types of non-bypassable charges and costs that our customers are bearing, and the impact that this is having on CCAs, and the restrictions, the legal restrictions that there are on CAM for CCAs specifically. There's SB 790 provided clearly that CCAs are exclusively responsible for their generation procurement, and CAM is interfering with that in a substantial way. So I just wanted to update you that we're receiving knee-jerk reactions at least, and hopefully we'll receive thoughtful consideration from the Commission. The next item that I wanted to bring up, and actually my last item for the evening, relates to the PG&E Greene option and the SDG&E Sun rate. It's been a while since we've talked about this. As you know, Senate Bill 43 was passed, which codifies the concept of having investor-owned utilities provide green options to their customer, so a more renewable product for their customer. In the comments that we've received to date from PG&E and from Southern California Edison, those two entities are taking two very different approaches. Southern California Edison, San Diego Gas and Electric appears to be taking the approach that they are making necessary modifications to their proposed green program in order to comply with the law. PG&E's approach is that they claim that the legislation is theirs, and in their words, ipso facto, their settlement agreement for their green option should be approved, and that the commission should not be, it appears that they're arguing that the commission should not be looking at whether there is actually cost shifting involved with their settlement proposal.
I mean, that's a very issue we were fighting.
Exactly, it is the very issue that was included in SB 43 based upon our actions up in Sacramento.
Right.
And that received broad-based support. So the testimony is coming in tomorrow, and we'll see if our suspicions are correct that maybe PG&E is going to take the approach that they don't need to provide cost information to the commission to make a reasonable determination. So that is going to be a big fight going forward, and it's going to be very important for CCAs and important for all customers to ensure that there's no cost shifting across different non-participating ratepayers. So that.
Okay, well, you know how important we think that issue is, so keep up the good work on it. We are keenly aware of the importance. Great.
Are there any other questions?
So, a question, when you're fighting all these different battles, do you try to sort of pick one or two that are more important than others? And will you have more success by picking one or two than by sort of fighting the battle across many fronts to some degree?
Yeah.
It's just a general philosophical question, but.
Yeah, the way that we've worked is through constant prioritization and reprioritization of the proceedings that are most important. It depends on, for example, how egregious certain proposals are. It depends on the impact to CCAs. It depends on a lot of different factors, whether something's going to be precedential. For example, in the long-term procurement plan, this relates to the outage of a nuclear facility. Well, we have a nuclear facility here in the PG&E service territory, and the commission is going to look to what's happening in Southern California as precedent for any outage that might happen in the PG&E service territory. So you obviously need to look not just at the immediate needs, but in the long run about how do you, number one, shape policies that begin to incorporate CCA, but also how are we going to be impacted. There's other ones, for example, that we're more in sort of a monitoring mode, or we'll take a very narrow strike on specific issues rather than try to cover an entire proceeding. So, but there is really a constant prioritization, reprioritization over time as new proceedings are started, as certain ones are in a lull. So it also depends on sort of bandwidth of the team at the time. So, but we do, right now I believe we're on around 26 active proceedings, and some of them are more quiet, so you don't have to prioritize the ones that are quiet. And then of the ones that are busy, you really have to we've been taking very proactive steps, even on proceedings that are currently in formation that haven't even been released. We've been speaking with Energy Commission, Division and Commission offices on certain rulemaking that will be coming out. So we try and get ahead of it. We try to make sure that our issues are in scope, and then we try and use resources that makes sense for that specific scenario. It's a long answer, but.
Okay, thanks, Beth. Any other questions for Beth? All right, well, great report. That was all there. Okay, item 15, members and staff matters, for good of the order.
Before we close, before you adjourn the meeting, may we adjourn the meeting in the memory and honor of Nelson Mandela?
Yeah.
Absolutely, that's a great idea for.
Nelson Mandela.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah,
we did
today.
Oh, I've heard it.
So, okay, yeah, we will close the meeting in honor of Nelson Mandela. Thank you, everyone. Adjourned.